I do most of the stunts myself that I have time for. We had a sword fight in the first one that I got caught along the side of the arm. It's not that big, but it was about 3 or 4 inches long.
If you grew up in the 90s, chances are Hercules wasn't just a hero. He was your hero. Every episode promised impossible monsters, ancient gods, and unforgettable adventures. But behind the legendary TV series were bizarre secrets, hidden mistakes, and shocking behind-the-scenes stories that most fans never discovered. Before you see Hercules the same way again, here are 20 weird facts that will completely change how you remember this iconic show. Number 20. The strongest man on television was secretly dying. Most of you grew up watching Kevin Sorbo throw grown men through walls and wrestle monsters without breaking a sweat. So this fact hits differently. In the summer of 1997, at the height of his fame and fitness, Sorbo noticed something wrong in his left arm. Tingling, numbness, his fingers turning cold for no reason. He was 38, trained every day, and performed his own stunts. Several doctors examined him during a publicity tour for Kull the Conqueror, and everyone insisted it was nothing serious. Sorbo believed them. Why would he not? He was Hercules. Then, while lifting weights, a searing pain shot from his shoulder down his left side. Driving home from a chiropractor, his vision blurred so badly he could barely see the road. An angiogram revealed an aneurysm in his left shoulder that had been sending blood clots through his system for months. After surgery, doctors delivered the real news. Kevin Sorbo had already suffered 3 strokes without realizing it. He kept the diagnosis secret for almost 15 years. In a Fox News interview, he admitted ego and fear kept him silent. In his memoir True Strength, he described going from a carefree athlete to someone who needed to grip chairs and counters just to make a 5-yard trip to the bathroom. Nobody watching at home knew the man playing Hercules could barely walk across his own trailer. The production team now had to completely rebuild the show around his absence, and the solution they came up with became one of the most bizarre episodes in the entire history of television. The strokes created television's strangest meta-episode when Sorbo's health collapsed during Season 4. The writers faced a problem with no obvious answer. Their lead actor could barely stand, but the show still had to deliver new episodes every week. His screen time was cut. Stunt doubles took over. In some episodes, Sorbo appeared for only a few minutes. But writers Alex Kurtzman and Roberto Orsi came up with something nobody expected. They created an episode called Yes, Virginia. There's a Hercules, set in the modern day, where the cast played fictionalized versions of the show's writers and producers. Bruce Campbell played producer Rob Tapper. Michael Hurst played writer Paul Robert Coyle. Kevin Smith played writer Jerry Patrick Brown. The story followed the staff panicking after Sorbo vanished during an earthquake in Los Angeles. The twist revealed the fictional Kevin Sorbo was actually Hercules, living as a mortal in the 20th century while playing himself in his own television show. Ares appeared and mocked his brother for pretending to be a mortal named Kevin Sorbo. Think about that too hard, and it creates a paradox that will melt your brain. The entire episode was born from a medical crisis, yet it became one of the most creative episodes of 90s television. The man who played Ares in that episode, the one who stole every single scene he walked into, had a real-life story far more devastating than anything his character ever experienced on camera. Number 18. The actor who played Ares never wanted to be an actor. Kevin Smith, the New Zealand-born actor who made the god of war feel genuinely terrifying and seductive at the same time, had absolutely no plans to ever set foot on a stage. His entire dream growing up was to play professional rugby. He lived and breathed the sport through his teenage years and into adulthood, and acting was never even on his radar. Then a concussion during a rugby match sidelined him, and while he was stuck at home recovering, his wife Suzanne spotted a casting notice for a musical about Elvis Presley called Are You Lonesome Tonight? She pushed him to try out. He went, and he got the part. That single moment redirected his entire life. Smith's mother was Tongan, and his father was a white New Zealander, and he carried a physical presence and intensity that the Auckland theater world had not seen before. He first appeared on Hercules not as Ares, but as Iphicles, Hercules' fully mortal half-brother. The producer saw something electric in his screen presence and later brought him back as Ares, which became the role that defined his career. From 1998 to 1999, Smith was simultaneously playing the god of war across 3 different television series at the same time. He appeared as Ares on Hercules, Xena, and Young Hercules concurrently, a scheduling feat that is almost unheard of in the television industry. Fans at conventions across the United States treated him like a rock star, and Hollywood was finally starting to pay attention. Smith was on the verge of crossing into major feature films when a catastrophic accident in China ended everything in the worst way possible. Ares was days away from starring alongside Bruce Willis in February of 2002. Kevin Smith had just finished filming the martial arts sequel Warriors of Virtue 2 in Beijing. He was excited because it gave him the chance to train with the stuntman from the acclaimed film Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. On February 6th, the day after filming wrapped, Smith fell from a lighting tower on set. Some reports placed the fall at 6 stories. His injuries were catastrophic, and he was placed on life support with severe head trauma. His wife Suzanne and his parents, Jeff and Yvonne, flew to Beijing and were by his side when he passed away 10 days later, on February 15th, at just 38 years old. He left behind 3 sons, Oscar, 11, Tyrone, 9, and Willard, only 3. The part that still haunts fans is what was supposed to happen next. In March that same year, Smith was scheduled to fly to Hawaii to begin filming the action thriller Tears of the Sun alongside Bruce Willis. It would have been his first major Hollywood role and the breakout moment everyone believed was coming. His memorial service was held at Auckland's Aotea Center, where castmates remembered a man who brought warmth, chaos, and laughter wherever he went. Kevin Smith was never really a villain. He simply played one better than almost anyone else ever had. The woman whose spinoff had already made her more famous than Hercules himself had an origin story on the show that was built entirely on rejection, illness, and sheer desperation. Number 16. Lucy Lawless was the 6th choice for Xena. Xena was never supposed to become a franchise. The character was written as a disposable 3-episode villain in Season 1 of Hercules and was meant to die in her final appearance, redeeming herself by sacrificing her life after her own soldiers turned against her. The first actress cast as Xena was Vanessa Angel, star of the Weird Science television series. Angel fell ill and could not fly to New Zealand for filming. Writer John Schulian later revealed the team spent the entire New Year's weekend searching for a replacement. Producer Robert Tappert then offered the role to Kim Delaney, who accepted immediately, but her manager called back 30 minutes later and withdrew her. For more actresses were offered the role, and everyone turned it down. Meanwhile, production was running out of time. Executives also resisted casting Lucy Lawless because she had just appeared in the previous Hercules episode as a different character named Lila, fearing audiences would be confused. Lawless later joked that the producers showed her a list of 5 actresses, and they all said no. So she thanked every one of them. She landed one of the most iconic female action roles of the 1990s, simply because she was the last person left. That is how close the world came to never having Xena at all. The spin-off that nobody planned for ended up becoming so successful that it reportedly created real friction with the man who was supposed to be the star of the entire franchise. Xena's popularity sparked a real rivalry behind the scenes when Xena Warrior Princess premiered in the fall of 1995 alongside Hercules Season 2. It was expected to ride in its parent show's shadow. That lasted about 6 weeks. Xena exploded in the ratings and blew past Hercules in viewership and cultural impact, eventually airing in more than 108 countries. TV Guide ranked it among its top cult shows ever, and reports began circulating that Kevin Sorbo was not handling the situation well. Multiple sources suggested he had grown frustrated watching the spin-off overshadow his show. Lawless addressed the speculation in a 1997 interview, saying there was no point in competing and describing the casts as one big happy family. Whether that was true behind closed doors is another matter. In the decade since both shows ended, Lawless and Sorbo's relationship deteriorated publicly, erupting into political clashes on social media that made it clear the harmony she described had not survived. While the leads were dealing with all of that tension off screen, one actor on the show was quietly pulling off something absurd that the producers actually tried to cover up with fake names. Number 14. Michael Hurst played 13 characters under fake names Michael Hurst, The British-born New Zealand actor who played Iolaus was one of the most versatile performers in the franchise. Across Hercules, Xena, and Young Hercules, Hurst portrayed 13 different characters in 86 episodes. Besides Iolaus, he played the underworld ferryman Sharon beneath heavy prosthetic makeup, the alternate universe Iolaus II, Iolaus' half-cousin Orestes, the demon Dahak, and several others. His most unusual creation was the Widow Twankey, a flamboyant British pantomime dame the producers discovered after watching Hurst perform in a local Auckland production of Pinocchio. They loved the performance and insisted he bring the character to the show. Because Hurst was born in Lancashire, England, he delivered the thick Northern English accent with complete authenticity, something British audiences noticed immediately. When those episodes aired, Hurst was not credited under his real name for the Widow Twankey scenes. Instead, the credits listed him as Edith Sidebottom. In the chaotic episode Grease is Burning, he even received 2 fake credits in the same episode. Edith Sidebottom for the Widow Twankey and Billy Wagstaff for a beggar he also played. The man became his own supporting cast, proving few actors matched his range or creativity. While Hurst was juggling 13 different roles in New Zealand, a teenager from Canada was about to show up on set wearing foam padding to make his arms look bigger, and that teenager would become one of the most famous actors alive. Ryan Gosling was young Hercules, and he does not talk about it when the prequel Young Hercules was greenlit for Fox Kids in 1998. The producers needed a new actor to play the teenage demigod. The original Young Hercules, Ian Bohen, declined because he did not want to relocate to New Zealand for a full series. Instead, an unknown 17-year-old Canadian named Ryan Gosling won the role. His costume and arm makeup were designed to make him appear bigger and more muscular, since Gosling did not exactly look like a demigod at 17. He moved to Auckland and filmed 50 episodes before the series was canceled after 1 season. In the years since, Gosling has rarely spoken about the experience, and many people involved with the production believe he does not look back on it with much affection. The show quietly disappeared, and Gosling returned to North America, where he soon landed The Notebook and entered a completely different level of fame. Think about that for a second. One of the most acclaimed actors of his generation, the star of La La Land, Blade Runner 2049, and Barbie, spent his teenage years wearing fake muscle padding and swinging prop swords at rubber monsters in a children's television series about Greek mythology, filmed thousands of miles from home. Gosling was not even close to the only future star hiding in the Hercules cast, and the list of names that passed through that show is genuinely staggering when you see it all laid out. Number 12. The show was a secret launchpad for Carl Urban, and Rose McIver. The Hercules and Xena universe doubled as an informal training camp for New Zealand actors who would later become internationally famous. Carl Urban played Cupid on Hercules and Julius Caesar on Xena, before landing the role of Eomer in Lord of the Rings, Dr. Bones McCoy in the Star Trek reboot, and Billy Butcher in The Boys. Rose McIver, who now leads the CBS hit Ghosts, appeared on Hercules as a child after making her film debut at age 3 in Jane Campion's The Piano. Her brother Paul McIver played Hercules' son Ezen in the television movies. Bruce Campbell played the recurring thief Autolycus across nearly 20 episodes and directed behind the camera. Gina Torres, who later became Jessica Pearson in Suits, played the warrior Queen Nebula. The credits list reads like a who's who of people who went on to shape modern pop culture. The man pulling the strings behind all of it had an even bigger ambition waiting in the wings, and the skills he sharpened on Hercules gave him the tools to change superhero cinema forever. Hercules was modeled after a football quarterback, not a Greek hero. The creators made a conscious decision that their Hercules would feel nothing like the marble statue most people associated with the character. Series creator Christian Williams studied every existing portrayal in myth and cinema, including the 1958 Steve Reeves classic, and threw it all out. Williams told the writing staff that Hercules needed a completely American persona, and his model was Joe Montana, the legendary San Francisco quarterback. Sam Raimi said in a 1995 interview that they did not want God staring down from Mount Olympus and chose to make Hercules an American regular guy who was not necessarily a musclehead. That decision shaped everything. Apollo rode a golden snowboard and talked like a Californian teenager. The dialogue was packed with modern slang. The producers avoided white togas entirely. Everything was designed to feel like a 90s buddy comedy that happened to exist in a world of gods and monsters. That refusal to play things straight also led the show to cross a line that most series would never dare touch, and it resulted in an existential paradox that still does not have a satisfying answer. Number 8. The show erased the line between fiction and reality within the show's own mythology. An episode reveals that Hercules survived into the late 20th century by ascending to godhood and chose to live among mortals using the alias Kevin Sorbo. He then worked on his own television show to make sure it accurately reflected the era he lived through. The character Hercules is playing himself in a dramatization of his own life, performed by an actor who is also literally himself. A second meta-episode pushed even further, with a killing mystery unfolding at a corporate retreat, while Kevin Sorbo secretly uses divine strength to protect the crew. When someone points out that if Ares is real, then Hercules must be real too. Every person in the room slowly turns to stare at Kevin. He laughs it off, says he's just an actor, then looks directly into the camera and raises his eyebrows. No show in the 90s was doing this, and Hercules pulled it off as a comedy bit born from the crisis of their lead actor's hidden strokes. The fight sequences that filled every episode looked like ancient warfare on screen, but the martial arts system powering every single punch and kick came from a tradition that most people would never associate with Greek mythology. Number 7. Hercules fought with White Lotus Kung Fu. Every fight scene in the entire series was choreographed using a specific and rare Chinese martial arts system called White Lotus Kung Fu. The show's martial arts instructor was Douglas L. Wong, a legendary practitioner and teacher of the style who spent a full 6 weeks before filming began giving Kevin Sorbo an intense personal crash course. The choice was deliberate and completely unconventional. Rather than using the slow, heavy sword and shield fighting you would expect from a show set in ancient Greece, the producers wanted fast, acrobatic, visually explosive combat that would pop on a television screen. White Lotus Kung Fu emphasized fluid movement, rapid strikes, and the kind of aerial wire work that Western audiences had only ever seen in Hong Kong action films. Hercules was one of the very first Western television productions to use extensive wire fu action sequences, years before The Matrix made wire work mainstream. Sorbo performed many of his own stunts and fight sequences through the first 3 seasons, which makes the fact that he suffered 3 undetected strokes during that same physical workload even more alarming in hindsight. Hercules was a secret pioneer of CGI creatures on television before Buffy's demons or Stargate's aliens became routine. Hercules was pushing the boundaries of computer-generated creatures on weekly television in ways nobody else was attempting. The show was among the first to use fully CGI monsters extensively, including the multi-headed Hydra and the towering Echidna, creatures impossible to create with puppets or prosthetics. In the mid-90s, CGI was still a feature film luxury. The New Zealand effects team developed techniques on a fraction of what major studios spent for similar results. The creatures looked rough by modern standards, but in 1995 nobody watching syndicated television had ever seen anything like them. That willingness to experiment on a shoestring budget also quietly built the visual effects infrastructure New Zealand would later use for far bigger projects. The New Zealand film industry that Hercules helped build did not just train camera crews and stunt performers, and the scale of what this show accidentally created is something most fans have never fully understood. Number 5. Hercules accidentally built the Lord of the Rings industry before Peter Jackson ever scouted a location for the Lord of the Rings in 1998. Hercules and Xena had already spent years training an entire generation of New Zealand film professionals. Production manager Pip Gillings, who later worked on Mission Impossible Fallout, started her career on the Hercules set. She said the longevity of those shows was a great training ground for a lot of people. Hercules helped launch Auckland film companies still operating today, including Main Reactor, which later built weapons for Disney's live-action Mulan. When Jackson arrived to construct Middle-earth, the camera operators, stunt coordinators, and effects technicians who powered his trilogy were largely Hercules and Xena veterans. New Zealand's film industry now generates roughly $2 billion in annual GDP, and insiders trace that boomed directly to the swords and sandals era Hercules pioneered. The producers did not just let the actors fight in ancient Greece either, and the creative freedom they gave the cast changed the personality of the entire show in ways that scripted television almost never allows. Number 4. The cast was encouraged to go off script, and it shows. The producers operated under a philosophy that was genuinely unusual for 90s syndicated television. During script readings, writers were completely open to suggestions from the actors. Beyond accepting notes, they actively encouraged ad-libbing dialogue and physical gags during filming. This is why so